Steve, you're on a whistle-stop tour of the world, really, promoting your new book, which we're going to talk to you about. But firstly, it'd be just great to get your insight into the greatest game on earth, which is rugby league.
Wow, that's the most open-ended question I've ever been asked. What is your insight into the game of rugby league? I've never been. Why would you like to be more specific?
Yeah, just I think sometimes, obviously, we did the Legends game last week, and over 5,000 people come out to support, on the back of some really good promotion. And I think what I struggle to get my head around is why, when the game's so good, the product on the field, we're still struggling for crowds. We're still struggling for people coming through the turnstiles to support the clubs.
Yeah, it is tough. I think a lot of it comes from it's almost like live by the sword, die by the sword, and I guess it's like you're born in the poorhouse, you live in the poorhouse. Rugby league was obviously born through the fact that many people in this part of the world couldn't afford to get injured, and they'd be time off work, and so that's how the game came about. And unfortunately, we still have a lot of people in the game who are all about the money and all about themselves, and they're a little bit desperate, and as a result we tend not to be as visionary as we could be. And maybe the secret to changing that is to change the DNA or the gene pool in rugby league, to get more people involved who don't need the game but actually want to be involved in the game. And I think you and I have been to Toronto and we've seen what it's like.
Unbelievable.
And I think we probably need more like that. We need more like that, and I mean more people involved in rugby league who don't worry whether they have a job tomorrow or not, who would just want to do what's right for the game and damn the consequences.
Are you a fan of these expansion projects then? Toronto, and obviously New York's been put on the cards now. Eric Perez seemingly involved with that bid as well. Is that the future of the game in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary, and I get frustrated sometimes when I hear people say, they don't bring any away fans, or they should have a quota. I mean, rugby league, in all intents and purposes, is not played in America. How could they have local players? It's like if you put an ice hockey team in Leeds and you made them pick players from Leeds, and they were playing in the NHL. Do you want them to lose every week? You know what I mean? So it really frustrates me. I think people don't understand that a club like New York or a club like Toronto Wolfpack, they're not like your team down the street in your village. They're actually a business. Professional sport isn't there for players. Professional sport is there to make money and to spread the brand. And it doesn't matter if, as I did a column the other day, it's like they're like a Costa coffee, Do they have to get their coffee beans from near the shop? No. It doesn't matter where the coffee beans come from, as long as they've got local customers. And in American sport, the rules are different, where with the draft, it's a coincidence if you're playing for your local team. It's a complete coincidence. Everyone's bought in from all over the country, and the fans don't care. They don't care where the players are from. So I think really for rugby league to stop being... We're living in a globalised society. I don't think in a few years there'll be local nothing. I mean, the only thing that's local now really is stuff that's perishable, isn't it? Like bread and milk. Everything else can come from anywhere. And I think sport is like that. Sport's going to be the big brands like the Premier League and the NFL, Major League Baseball. They're increasingly going to crush everything in their path internationally. And you're either on that train or you're just waiting to get crushed. And I think it's very important that rugby league is on that train and part of that trend in society.
As part of the expansion, one project that's been a huge success is the Catalan project. 10 years we've had them. We've enjoyed the trips to Perpignan in Super League. And it could all be coming to a bit of a sad end if the Catalans end up going down in the current structure of the game. Firstly, the Catalan Dragons as a team, and we've been there this year, it was a phenomenal experience. It's really important they stay in Super League.
Yeah, I guess it is important, and particularly with people talking about franchising coming back. So franchising could come back 1 or 2 years too late for Catalans, to save Catalans, which would be a real shame. It's interesting that the New Zealand Warriors have the same sort of problem, where it's a traditional rugby league area. Everyone wants them to be successful, aside from those few people who say they don't bring enough away fans. I tell you what, if you're taking the coach to a game in New Zealand, you're going to get pretty wet on the journey. So I'm glad that isn't really an issue in the NRL. But yeah, if franchising is coming back, then let's do it, because we don't want to lose clubs like Catalans. But again, if you didn't have promotion and relegation, if you just had licences, then it wouldn't be an issue. And I'm Australian, so I come from a place where we don't have promotion and relegation, and sometimes it's difficult to see the wisdom of it. But I can understand everything's different here, you know.
We went over there with David Fotty from Catalan Sports Stores, and Dave was saying to me on the phone, because his whole business is threatened. If they go down, his whole Catalan Sports Stores is threatened because there's not many teams travelling over there. And he was saying, how can they be persecuted for one bad year, and all this 10 years of growth, one bad year? And he has got a point, but I do also understand. I got hammered on Twitter for putting out a pro-Catalan tweet saying I hope they stay up because it's so important. The second biggest business in Rugby League. But financially, it'd be tough without them.
Yeah, it would be. I don't really know what the answer is. I'd actually like to see a World Club Series where you actually qualify as the best club in your country. So we actually have, the New Zealand Warriors, and you would think Catalans, although Toulouse, maybe now, but New Zealand Warriors would be, and Catalans would be in it every year. But it'd be actually a true world club championship.
I like that. Toronto?
Yeah, you'd have Toronto in it, and then obviously you could even have the PNG Hunters in it as the best.
PNG.
So it'd be a completely new property. I hate pre-season games that mean nothing, where they throw open the gates, there's a few hundred people there, and the only people who get anything out of the coaches. I hate that. If you're a full-time professional, every time you go on the field, it should be leveraged, and the game should be trying to make some money out of it, and it should be an occasion befitting your status as an athlete, So, again, that's going off on a tangent. You've got promotion and relegation here, and what do you do? I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah,
like Toronto. Someone said to me the other day, we were talking about people on Twitter, someone said to me the other day that he hopes Toronto, don't go into Super League and take the place of an English team. I was like, I think that's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, do you think David Argyle has spent all of his money so that they get to the top of the championship and they go, we changed our mind, you can't join Super League? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think you have to accept it. I mean, some people want to keep it's like I dropped the book in there, but the book's also about music, and some people want their local band to stay local in the pub. They don't want their band to go to a club and then to a theatre and then to an arena and then to a stadium. As soon as their favourite band has a hit, they say they've sold out. I think there's a lot of people feel like that about rugby league. They want rugby league to stay, be it in Sydney at Leichhardt Oval, or be it here. They want it to stay at the old Mendehoes Jungle, and they don't want to see the game embrace other people. But I think for us, not just through commercial interest, because obviously we get more work if the game gets bigger. But I think most of us, I think you're the same. Our team is rugby league, and we cheer our team against other teams being the other sports. So for us, we can't get our head around people wanting the game to stay small time. It's foreign to me,
Mate, all we need is the game to grow. It's got to get out there. We're really passionate about that at Rugby MM, and the project of passion for you has been to write this book. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, I when I started doing a bit of promo for it, I set myself the task of having a different answer to the question. So, what's your book about? And I really think I could come up with 100 accurate answers. The most cynical answer would be it's about a midlife crisis. But I went to 52 gigs and 52 games in 52 weeks. And that was initially going to be what the book was about, kind of a reportage, just a bit of reporting, a bit of travel, writing, a bit of a jolly. But then I learned some things about my own background. I'm adopted, and I didn't know much about the first 3 months of my life. And so, and I realised that if I hadn't been dumped, but if I hadn't been adopted and put in a rugby league town like Wollongong, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers know what I'm talking about. If you weren't in this part of the country, would you like rugby league? Does it have an intrinsic value that would have attracted you anyway, or are you just a product of your upbringing? So it ended up being a bit of a story about identity. That we think these things are what we are. We think we like this sort of music and this sort of sport and that sort of beer and that sort of person, that sort of work. But actually, these things come down to very arbitrary things. And for me, it was the first 3 months of my life. My family was quite sort of in the 20s. They were kind of bohemians. My grandfather was a surgeon. My grandmother was a socialite, and that is not the sort of thing where you're going to end up following the Illawarra Steelers and Iron Maiden. You know what I mean? So I thought those things were essential to who I am. And then I had to now go back and go, well, what if what if things were different? What would I like? And what do I like about these things? And what is their intrinsic value? So it went from being just a piece of gonzo journalism to being something a little bit more deeper, you know. So yeah,
a bit of deepness. I like that, Steve.
Yeah.
It's very similar. You said about where you ended up. Obviously, completely by accident from obviously being placed. Chef Walker had a similar story. He wasn't adopted, but his family moved from Harrells over to Hunslet, and because of the area we're in, he started playing rugby league. It's completely the same kind of story. But I've got to ask you, in those 52 weeks, which was the best gig you went to, and which was the best game you went to?
The best game. I'll start with the best gig. Actually, went to some big gigs. I saw Guns N' Roses in Nashville at the home of the Tennessee Titans, and I saw AC/DC here at City of Manchester Stadium, Etihad, with Axl Rose singing. But I think the best gig I saw was at a leagues club on the Central Coast. Right at the end, there was a band called the Screaming Jets from Newcastle who were big in the 80s. And actually, the singer Dave Gleeson, he used to referee with Tony Archer. His brother's on the coaching staff at the Knights, and as a kid, he got a neck injury when he was 12. He played up in Newcastle, and got a neck injury when he was 12. Had to give up rugby league, so he took up being a touch judge. Imagine that, a rock star as touch judge. So, and the best game, nothing really sticks out. It was, it was just interesting. I went to. I think the best experience I had at rugby league, and I'm not talking about rating the game as a spectacle, but the best experience I had at rugby league is obviously in December. It's very hard. Part of it was thanks to you. You helped me. I went to a Queen's game here in Leeds because it's very hard to find rugby league anywhere in the world in December. I could have gone to Jamaica, but I couldn't afford it. So I went to a game here in Leeds, an amateur game, and that was a great experience. Like no touch judges, like the crossbar was like that, and and the banter, like the players are bantering with the crowd during the game, almost with the ball in their hands. But I also went to France for a weekend and saw 3 games there, and that was a wonderful experience. Just the way rugby league is still ingrained in the culture in the south of France, even though it's completely non-mainstream. Aside from Catalans, So, and it's still it means so much to people there, So I would say the best experience I had at rugby league in the course of the book was the weekend in France. But I can't really say the best game, the best spectacle. I guess I'd have to have a leaf through the book again,
Mate, what's the book called?
It's called Touchstones. It's called Touchstones, and it's finally out here in the UK, like in September. So pretty much now, you can. And I would ask people that I believe in Australia, our issue was to actually the book's sitting in the stores, and our issue was to do this, and so people would go and get it. It's the opposite here. The issue is that we need people to go to stores and say they want to get it in.
Yeah, get it in.
Yeah, so it's Scratching Shed. It's called Touchstones, and once that happens, hopefully, once they sell, more will come in, and we'll get a bit of a roll. But it's a book about. It's like the Seinfeld of books. It's a book about nothing, but it's also a book about everything.
Outstanding. That is the one, the only Steve Mascord. Cheers for coming in, mate.
It's nice to have me in. It's great to finally visit your wonderful studios.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.